What a wonderful time of worship. Thank you very much, Bob. See if we can get the screen working. It's trying. Well, I'm trying too, so one of us will get it. There you go. We're going to be studying the book of 3 John today. It's the last letter of the one-letter books of the Bible. Shortest letter, shortest in words, but very, very powerful. One of those letters that we kind of forget about at times, but it's got a message that's so important. Everybody knows good old Charlie Brown, right? And you know his good friend Linus, who had a big sister named Lucy. And it was Linus who once said, "Big sisters are the crabgrass in the lawn of life." That was his feeling toward his big sister. And for one reason we'll see in just a second, he had just told Lucy that he was wanting to be a doctor when he grows up. And Lucy just started laughing like crazy. She laughed. She couldn't believe it. There is no way possible you're going to be a doctor. Do you know why you can't be a doctor? You don't love mankind. And Linus said, "I do too love mankind. I don't like people." I think that's got a familiar message to us in some ways. It's indeed the fact that if it wasn't for people on this earth, we'd be pretty good. Matter of fact, up until the time people were on this earth, it was perfect. People came around, we messed up everything. So if we could just, get some people out of our life or get people gone, this world would be a great place to live. Back in the Middle Ages, a Linus-like wisdom man said that the world is a lot like Noah's Ark. If it wasn't for the tempest on the outside, we couldn't stand the stench on the inside. The church is like that, he says. And unfortunately, I think we all have probably had some times where we could tell some stories that would show that to be true. And 3 John is going to talk about why that sometimes is true in the church. The elder, John, the apostle, to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Beloved, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well. It gave me great joy when some believers came and testified about your faithfulness to the truth, telling how you continue to walk in it. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. Gaius is a man who is important at the church where he attends, one of the leaders of the church. His name means to rejoice, coming from a Latin origin. And John writes to him and he says, "I just pray that your physical health is as good as your spiritual health." Think about that for a second. I want to pray that your physical health is as good as your spiritual health. How are you doing, Gaius? I just pray that you're faithful, and I hear it from everyone that you're walking in the truth and you're obeying the truth. You're faithful to the truth. You love the truth. And there's not anything I'd love to hear any more than that. To put it bluntly, Jesus said, what would it profit you if you gained the whole world and lose your soul? What would you give in exchange for your soul? And John is looking at this man who is a spiritually healthy person. And he says, I want your physical health to be as good as your spiritual health. And sometimes I turn that around and think otherwise. John, Gaius, you're doing well. You're faithful to the truth. You're walking in the truth. You're conducting your lives as one who's in the truth. Somebody came up to us this morning or anytime today or anytime this week and said, how are your children doing? If they come up and ask me, how's Angela and Nathan doing? So I start thinking, I think, man, they're doing great. They live in a nice place. They have nice cars. They have great jobs. They're better off than a lot of people in this world. They serve on school boards. They do a lot of wonderful things for people. Would that be really what's most important for Angela and Nathan? Would it even be better if I could say they are so spiritually healthy? They are doing so well following God. They don't have much. They don't have a fancy house. They don't have a car that are fancy. But they love God. And they serve him faithfully. Is there anything you'd rather know about someone than that? Someone you love. We think oftentimes about the physical health, the jobs, but there's nothing more important to me than to hear that my children are walking in the truth. And John's writing that to a people, to Gaius and to others that he had helped bring to Christ. And he said, I'm hearing that our people, my children, are walking in truth. I don't get any greater joy than that. There's nothing better than that. And Joyce, he goes on in verse 5 to say, beloved, it's a faithful thing you do in all your efforts for these brothers, strangers as they are, who testified to your love before the church. You will do well to send them on the journey in a manner worthy of God, for they have gone out for the sake of the name, accepting nothing from Gentiles or pagans. Therefore, we ought to support people like these, that we may be fellow workers in the truth. Gaius, I'm hearing about your faithfulness. And one of the things I'm hearing is your willingness to accept strangers in your home who are out for the missionary body of Christ, who's out seeking to share Christ, and they're traveling and they come to your home and you are so generous to them. You let them come into your home, you bless them, you care for them. So here's Gaius. He's spiritually healthy. He's consistent with the truth. He's walking in the truth. He's a lovingly generous person. He supports people that he doesn't really personally know. They're just people who are out sharing Jesus Christ. There are people who were called to leave their home. There are people like Chad and Amy and other people who leave the people they love the most, travel to a place that they don't know a thing about, and at the same time, they tell people about Jesus. He says there's nothing greater than that. Nothing greater than that. Some people think Gaius might have been in poor physical health. because he says, I hope you're doing well physically as you are spiritually. We don't know that. But here's one thing I want us to be careful about. Every one of us who has any struggles in life, it's because sin's in the world. But it may not be because you did something wrong that caused it. I have seen too many times when a loving brother would go up to someone, brother or sister, who's ailing, and there's just like Job's friends. What did you do so wrong to be so sick? And Job's friends found out Job hadn't done anything wrong to be so sick. Be careful what we think about brothers and sisters who are struggling physically. Let's don't pass anything on to them of illness spiritually that they don't have. Don't buy into the health and wealth gospel that says, if you love God the most, you'll get the most, you'll have the most. Don't buy into that. Make sure that we support the people who have been so faithful to God. He says, beloved, you're faithful in these things. You accept strangers. And his specific point that he's making in this book to his friend Gaius is, keep on taking care of missionaries. I don't care what anyone says, and we'll see who that anyone is in just a second. I want you to keep on taking care of the missionaries, because down in verse 8, we are fellow workers for the truth when we support people like that. Hope Works, Agape, other missionary places, Chad and Amy. This past week, JCC helped one of their people who might have lost their house. And JCC family came together and said, no, you're not. God says you're fellow workers in the truth when you do that. You are participants in the way that these people are working. You are receiving from that. You're getting some credit for that. No, we're not the ones over in South Africa. But God says, I'm giving you some credit for that. For every soul that has been saved, every person's been helped through those works that we've done, the church has done. God said, you get some credit for that. You may not be the ones like Hillary working over there, but you get some credit for that. It's like a partnership. I like the word partnership a whole lot more than some other words, but they're all the same: fellowship, relationships, partnership. And that's why I asked Oscar a while ago to go to 1 Corinthians 10. He talks about there that we participate when we eat the Lord's Supper. We are participants in the suffering of Jesus. Think about it. We are participants in the suffering of Jesus. We receive benefits with the suffering of Jesus. We acknowledge our willingness to suffer for Jesus. When we take those emblems, it is more than just a few moments. It is a time where we acknowledge Jesus Christ. We participate with you in all of your sufferings. We receive the blessings that you gave us through your sufferings. We want to be with you. We'll go out from here, we'll die to ourselves and suffer for you. 2 Corinthians 8:4 talks about the giving part. And the Macedonians, who are so poor, They would have been called the poorest people on earth. And yet they're having a famine over in Jerusalem. And some of Paul's workers come into Macedonia, kind of passing through, and the Macedonians say, we want to give to those people. And they said, no, you don't have enough. Don't you realize you're so poor? And they begged Paul, let us participate. Let us get some benefit from the helping of our brothers and sisters. I don't want us to think if we're not always the one who is right there on the spot, that we're not participating. It's just something I think is so important for us to realize. I read about a missionary a person, they were trying to decide, who can we send to India? We need somebody to go to India. And they talked about it until one man said, and this is back in the day, I will go down if you hold the ropes. I'll get on that rope and I'll climb down to where you want me to go. But you've got to promise to hold the ropes. We're partners here. We're holding ropes for people if we're not the ones that are doing some things. And that's a blessed statement that John makes to his brother Gaius. We have another brother. If I can find the right place to go here. There's another brother in the church that is causing all the problems. Have you ever been to church split? They're not fun. There's only one that I know anything about personally, but they happen all the time. Brothers and sisters who come together in the Lord and they split. The church divides. Why? I've written something to the church, Paul said, or John said, but Diotrephes, who likes to put himself first, does not acknowledge our authority. So if I come, I will bring up what he's doing, talking wicked nonsense against us. And not content with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers. And also he stops those who wants to welcome them and puts them out of the church. I've got a feeling that the church must be meeting at Diotrephes' house. John's written a letter before, and Diotrephes received it. He tore it up. He tore it up because he didn't acknowledge the authority of John and the other apostles. Notice it says he does not acknowledge our authority. He's speaking of himself, but he's speaking of himself with the combination of other shepherds, with the combination of other apostles that he worked with. And so here's a man in the church by the name of Diotrephes. John converted these people so that they would start a church. And this man will not listen to anything John has to say. He doesn't want anybody else to listen to anything John has to say. This is the same John that sat next to Jesus at the Last Supper. This is the same John that laid his head on the chest of Jesus at the Last Supper. This is the same John who was at the cross when all the other apostles were not there. This is the same John that Jesus said, you take care of my mother. This is the same John who was probably the last person alive at this point that was an apostle. And we've got a self-appointed leader. We've got a self-appointed leader, the leader in the church that has nothing good to say about John. He is superior. He loves to be thought as greater than anyone else in the church. He thinks he's got the best ideas for everyone in the church. If we got something to do, listen to me. I know what we ought to do. And he requires other people basically to just follow him because he is the greatest. So his name is Diotrephes. He likes to put himself first. He's appointed himself as first. He's not just a brother who is first. He is the brother who is first. He's preeminent. He rejects the authority of Jesus and his appointed leaders. He spreads malicious gossip about John. Just malicious gossip. Things that don't have any truth to them at all. And then he also withholds his hospitality to God's servants. He doesn't welcome them to his home. If you are preeminent, if you are the guy, what are you going to do serving others? My goodness, they ought to be bringing you everywhere and feasting you all around everywhere. What could they do? And he's kicking out people from the church who would help anybody. Again, I think that probably means the church was meeting at this rich man's house. And so he heard, Gaius, you invited some missionary strangers into your house. You've helped some of them financially. Get out. You can't come to my house to worship anymore. He reminds me of 3 evil fairy tales. You've heard of these. Megalomaniacs, Wicked Witch of the West. All she wanted was those slippers. Because if I have those slippers, I'll be greater than anybody else. I can get around anywhere I want to go. Or you have then Cruella de Vil. Remember her? You know, I didn't know until recently, I think I didn't know until yesterday or last week. Cruel means cruel. De Vil means devil. She's a cruel devil. Cruella de Vil in the story of the 101 Dalmatians. Her focus was just to get the most fashionable coat that anybody could wear in that day. And she can get it from the young Dalmatians' dog skin. Older ones don't need those. Got to have those young puppies. Have the best skin. And I'll have the ultimate fashion statement when I wear that. People will look around at me and they'll just stand in awe of me. And you got Count Dracula, a demon worshiper who, in order to be preeminent, sold his soul and the soul of his son to an evil god. And that god made a pact with him that I'll make you the supreme on the earth. So who's number one? There is no one who is number one other than Jesus. In all things, he's got to have the preeminence. Anyone who claims to be first, Jesus said, you're last. Anyone who is last, Jesus said, you're first. We want to avoid church splits. We want to avoid going through that miserable time that so many have gone through. Goodness, there's there's situation after situation that I know about where people have just basically said, in essence, what Diotrephes was saying. I'm boss around here. And if I'm the boss around here, then you've got to obey me. This is quit for some reason. Can you flip it for me? Okay. So anyone that's got to be number one just does not know Jesus. Let's put it just as strictly as we could. I want us to see in this that we avoid gossip. If you ever hear someone come up to you and say, I probably shouldn't say this, but tell them don't. Just tell them to keep it to themselves. If they probably shouldn't say it, don't. But sometimes we say, well, it's okay. I won't tell anybody else. You can trust me. We don't know people's hearts. But in some reason, something's going on here that gives us some idea of how we treat people, how we respect people, how much we hold them in esteem. Did John know Diotrephes? He didn't know his heart. I can hear Diotrephes saying right now, judge not that you be not judged. Man, we've misused that passage. We have so misused that passage. Jesus is going to say himself, judge people by their works, by their actions. And Diotrephes, John says, I know you think you are number one. What have I done now? Did I I got behind some way. That's stuck again. There it goes. It doesn't have to be my way or the highway. Matter of fact, if you know of anyone amongst us, I don't know of anyone, but I love being able to just warn us. If you love anyone who thinks they are the preeminent one and that things have to go their way, then please tell them that they can go their way. If you don't do what I said, I'm leaving. Bye. Don't call us, we'll call you. No, we might call them. We hope we win them back. But we don't want that kind of situation going on. So, we must deal with the Diotrephes. John says, when I come, I'll see him face to face. And I'm just saying to us in a loving way, and I'm sincere when I say I don't know if there's anything going on like this. But if anyone starts acting like a Diotrephes but me, no, I'm just kidding. If anyone starts acting like a Diotrephes, send them out. You have to face that. We have to deal with that, or the church will not ever go forward. So we come to a third man. Cover him briefly. Beloved, do not imitate evil, but imitate good. You've got this Diotrephes here. Don't imitate him. Imitate good. Whoever does good is from God. Whoever does evil hasn't seen God. Demetrius. And I'm thinking Demetrius may be the one who's carrying this letter, delivering this letter. Demetrius has received a good testimony from everyone. And from the truth itself, we also add our testimony. And you know that our testimony is true. Brothers and sisters, be careful who you idolize. If they do good, that's great. Let everybody know about them. But if they don't, we cannot follow that person. Demetrius, though, is a person who's worthy of the trust. Everybody says Demetrius. You know about Demetrius? Yes. Wow, what a faithful brother. Everybody knows about him. He's a man of truth. He's walking in the truth. The testimony of everybody else is saying that. He's not saying that about himself. Lionel doesn't go around saying, I'm number one. But we know about the truth. We know about his works. We know that he walks in truth. And we share that with anybody we want to share it with. His greatest joy, he says, is to know my brothers and sisters are walking in truth. Then just look around our group of brothers and sisters, many of them who are not here today. We haven't yet come to a conclusion about what the government laws would be when we join together. But we're working on that. And I believe we've concluded that at least over the last couple of years, we've really learned something about each other. We've come to love each other. We don't always understand what other people do. Sometimes people think I'm weird. Don't speak up, Ken. Some people think that. We don't understand each other's culture that much. We don't understand each other's background. But we've got to be trustworthy, truthful, as we travel together and have the spirit of Demetrius rather than Diotrephes. He concludes the letter by saying, I had much to write to you. This is the shortest letter in the New Testament. Old Testament too. I had much to write to you, but I would rather not write with pen and ink. I hope to see you soon, and we can talk face to face. Peace to you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends each by name. That is a little last phrase really spoke strongly to me. I'm having memory problems in my age. I am. But one of the things that draws people together is the ability to call each other by name. Peace to you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends, each by name. What an intimate letter that he's written. Just to tell us how important it is to not divide, and especially when not divide anytime somebody thinks they're preeminent. We've got to be known as servants to one another. We've got to become faithful in that. The only one who's preeminent, Jesus Christ. He's the King above all kings. He is even the King of those who just think that they are kings. He's the king of Diotrephes, whether he knew it or not. And let's always remember the greatest among us will always be our servants. Always be the servants. God, thank you for this little letter.